All right, today we're jumping into a real medical head scratcher. It all starts with a simple gesture, something you probably do every single day without even thinking about it. But this is a strange case where the biggest clue isn't what's there, but what's suddenly missing. Seriously, go ahead and try it right now. Make the OK sign. Touch the tip of your thumb to the tip of your index finger to make that perfect little O. Simple, right? Now imagine waking up one morning and you just couldn't do that anymore. Your fingers just plain refuse to cooperate. Well, that sudden, bizarre inability to make the OK sign, it's actually a telltale sign of a really rare condition. It's called anterior interosseous nerve syndrome. Yeah, it's a mouthful, so we'll just call it AINS. So let's dig into what that actually is and, why it even happens. So when we're talking about how this thing actually shows up, it's pretty interesting. That missing OK sign, that's kind of like the smoking gun. It's the final and most obvious clue in a whole trail of strange symptoms. It usually kicks off not with the weakness you'd expect, but with pain. We're talking a really deep, nagging ache in your forearm. And then, almost out of the blue, the pain just fades. But in its place, this very specific muscle weakness pops up. All of a sudden, you can't pinch things right. And if it's your main hand, your handwriting can go completely haywire. Okay, and here's a huge clue for the doctors trying to figure this out. AINS is different from a lot of other nerve problems because there's no numbness, no tingling, no pins and needles, none of that. And why is that? Well, it's because this particular nerve, the anterior interosseous nerve, is a pure motor nerve. Think of it like a one-way street. It only sends signals out to the muscles to tell them what to do. It doesn't bring any sensory info back. All right, so armed with these very specific clues, doctors can really start their investigation. But the thing is, before they land on ANS, they've got to rule out a bunch of other, way more common possibilities. And I really want to stress just how rare we're talking about here. AINS accounts for less than 1% of all nerve issues in the upper arm. I mean, it is super uncommon, which makes spotting it correctly all the more important. So the real aha moment usually happens during the physical exam. The doctor asks the patient, "Hey, can you make an OK sign for me?" And instead of that nice round O, the person makes this sort of flat, weak pinch. That right there, that's called the Kilo-Nevin sign, and it's basically the calling card for ANIX. To really get a handle on this, let's stack it up against something you've probably heard of, carpal tunnel syndrome. With carpal tunnel, you get all that numbness and tingling, right? The sensory stuff. But with AIS, it's all motor weakness, no sensory issues. Even the tests are different. A classic test for carpal tunnel won't show anything for an AIS patient. The two are just in completely different leagues. Okay, but this is where the plot really thickens. For years and years, doctors have been arguing about what's really causing this. Is it just a simple plumbing problem, a mechanical issue, or is there something way more complicated going on under the hood? For the longest time, everyone thought it was just compression, a classic pinched nerve, basically. The analogy is perfect. It's like a kink in a garden hose stopping the flow. But that doesn't really explain why ANIS just shows up so suddenly. So now there's a new theory gaining ground, neuritis. This is an inflammation of the nerve itself, maybe even triggered by your own immune system. So it's less like a kinked hose and more like a sudden electrical storm raging inside the nerve. And believe me, this neuritis idea is really starting to take hold. In fact, a lot of the newer research suggests that ANS isn't a standalone pinched nerve problem at all. It might actually be a version of a completely different condition. And that condition is called neuralgic amyotrophy, or NA. Now check this out. NA is when your immune system attacks your nerves, causing severe pain, which is then followed by weakness. I mean, does that sound familiar? It's pretty much a spot-on description of how AINS works. That's why a lot of experts are now convinced that AINS is just a very specific, localized version of NA. Okay, so if the culprit is probably inflammation, an internal storm, and not just a physical kink, well, how on earth do you treat that? This leads us right to the road to recovery. And this, right here, is the best part of the whole story, the really good news. For a lot of people, AINS is what they call self-limiting, which means it often just gets better on its own. It's like the body figures out how to calm that electrical storm, and over time, your function can come back, all without any drastic measures. And because it can fix itself, the treatment plan almost always starts out conservatively. Doctors usually go with a wait-and-see approach for maybe 6 months or so. They just monitor everything, looking for any sign that the body is healing itself before they even think about doing anything more invasive. So, step one is really all about managing the symptoms and just keeping everything in working order. We're talking about things like pain meds, maybe some hand therapy or a splint to give those weak muscles some support, plus exercises to keep the muscles from locking up, which is called a contracture. The whole goal is just to create the perfect healing environment for that nerve to bounce back. Now, if you go down that road for several months and there's just nothing, no improvement, then surgery gets put on the table. And these operations, like a neurolysis to clean up scar tissue or a decompression to relieve pressure, they're all about one thing: physically freeing up that nerve from anything that could be getting in the way of its recovery. So, we've gone deep into this whole strange case of the missing OK sign. What are the big takeaways? What should you really remember from all this? Let's just run through the key points real quick. 1. ANS is rare and it's a motor-only problem, no numbness. 2. That busted OK sign is the classic symptom. That's the big red flag. 3. The cause probably isn't a simple pinched nerve, but a more complicated immune system freakout. And 4. The first line of treatment is usually just patience. Wait and see before you jump to surgery. You know, it really makes you think, doesn't it? The whole ANS story shows how something that seems so small, like not being able to make a simple hand signal, can actually be a huge clue to something really complex going on deep inside us. It makes you wonder, what other simple little signs might be pointing to bigger things, hidden in plain sight?